Hi there, and thank you for joining us. I am really excited to be here today talking with two of our 24 contributing authors of the third book in the Changing Work Collective book series. The book is called Are We Friends or Coworkers? Exploring Relationships at Work, and it's scheduled to be released on May 30th, 2025. My name is Rachel Radway. I am an executive and leadership coach for high achieving, highly sensitive, and neurodivergent women. And I spent many years in communications, team operations, and facilitation roles. So the topic we'll be talking about today is very close to my heart. I'm also a volunteer host and member of changingwork.org and a contributing author of the second book of the Changing Work Collective book series, which was an Amazon bestseller. It is called Leading with Compassion, Cultivating Connection from the Inside Out. And it's available both on Amazon and on bookshop.org. For those of you who aren't familiar with Changing Work, we're an online community of humans who are committed to conscious business practices and changing work from the inside out. So I'm here today with Xiaotong Lo, who wrote a chapter called Good Morning, Ni Hao, Hola, Guten Morgen, and Lori Kirkland, whose chapter is called From Friction to Flow, Using the Human Operating System. So thank you both for being here today. Let's go ahead and start with introductions. Xiaotong, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to write your chapter for Are We Friends or Coworkers?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here today. So I am Xiaotong Lo. I'm a Taiwanese, being here in the United States for around 5 years, where I transitioned from being an international student to working in tech as a data architect. As both an international employee and a woman in tech, I have experienced the unique challenges, but also the incredible strengths that come from diversity. This experience have inspired me to actively promote and help build environments where people like me can truly thrive, where our voices are heard, valued, and empowered. And in terms of what motivated me to write this book is, well, I actually came across this opportunity through my LinkedIn network. It was the Book Two project, Leading with Compassion. Well, the idea of contributing to the collective book is something special. But what truly motivated me was the chance to share a personal and real world experience, one that told me something meaningful. I believe the story like this can resonate with others going through similar situations.
Absolutely. I think is going to resonate with a lot of people. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Lori, welcome to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to join this project.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Lori Kirkland. I'm the chief tech hippie at a company called Deep Human X, which is an AI consultancy. And I'm a 20-year tech and corporate executive. I'm a neuroscientist, and most of all, I'm a lover of people. When this opportunity came up to contribute with all of these other great authors, I thought it was such a great opportunity to be able to look at the workplace overall and how we can change it. Because I think everyone in the world can agree that, after the pandemic, we all had this opportunity to reassess what we value. And when we came out of it, it's like work isn't working anymore, right? So, in order to make changes, we have to start having conversations out in the open. And so, I'm really proud to be part of this that conversation that is one of the many, many narratives that need to be had. But I think that we're just at a place, not only with after the pandemic, but with AI, that's going to be bringing changes to the workplace as well. I feel like we as people have this opportunity to use this change for the betterment of humanity, right? To really start thinking and dreaming about how do we make work better instead of only working for money or only working in survival mechanisms. So I'm very excited to be part of this group of authors who is really looking at the relationships between people at work.
I'm excited that both of you are here talking about this. Xiaotang, when you first learned about the book project and the theme, Are We Friends or Coworkers? What came to mind for you?
So, to be honest, this thing, when I see this project, the description about the title, I actually apply on the very last day before the deadline because I feel so ordinary for myself. I wasn't sure if I had something valuable enough to offer, but then I realized maybe that is exactly why I should do that. If my working experience in these 5 years in a multicultural team, a global team, can make even a small impact on someone else's journey, then it is worth putting out there.
I think that's lovely, and I also think that um, it's a sentiment that a lot of people are going to be able to relate to. I know that I had the same feeling when I was thinking about contributing to book two. Well, what do I have to offer? Um, and Lori, one of the things you were talking about was this is up to all of us, right? It's up to all of us to make change in the workforce. So, what do you think about what Xiaotang just said?
No, I think it's great. And having really played on global teams since the mid to early 2000s, I completely understand and agree with you of it. It does take the more holistic point of view, um, to really make a difference. So I like that you feel like you're ordinary. I think that we all feel like that, right? So working together, it makes a big difference. And if we take it back to the topic of the book of are we friends or coworkers, right? It does come down to how do you show up in the workplace? Who is the person you are? Is that person drastically different than the person that you are when you're having a beer with your neighbors or, hanging out? And so that's where we've I see that we've gotten in the workplace. We've gotten almost afraid of anything that would be considered soft skills or woo woo, but ultimately, really just people skills, right? Like we've pretended that we haven't been people for a long time now, right? And that we've tried to turn people into machines. But I think that we're at a place where, hey, we have machines to do the machine work now. Now we have to actually all work on being better humans. So I really liked the title. And that's what drew me to this is like, hey, this is a really juicy topic that has a million different ways that we could look at it, but at the core of it is it's I'm me, you're you, we're just people. And like, hey, we can actually write the story of what the workplace looks like.
Absolutely. And that brings me to my next question for you, Lori, which is um, where did you come up with the concept of the human operating system that's in the title of your chapter?
So the operating system is kind of a generic term that's been out there. It's been used in a few places through the years, but really what it refers to is how that each of us as human beings, we have patterns that we operate. For instance, all of us are using the same pattern to breathe, but we're not even aware of that pattern. But there are a lot of patterns that we can actually, once we stop and think about taking a breath, oh, you become aware of that pattern. Well, there's a lot of patterns like that that are running at work. And what happens is I come with my pattern, you come with your pattern. And so what the human operating system does, talking about moving from like 10 situations to flow, which is that ease that you might have with like your best friend, right? If you looking at it through the lens of the human operating system, I found it to be really valuable for people to feel like they have something tangible to look at because we are so processed and we've got our standardization of processes at work and using the term the human element is what my company refers to the human operating system as is really a way for us to as people kind of own our own patterns and see them and not have to be so emotional about them because there are just things that are running that can easily be changed if you take notice of them. So that's where the idea came from. I have a neuroscience background. I'm always thinking about thinking, and the concept of the human operating system is so that you and I and our teammates, right, can talk about what is going on in relationships without it feeling like it's so personal. and getting away from the woo-woo shyness that many companies have.
It makes so much sense. And when you say that the term has been used, in different situations before, I can absolutely see that. And yet I hadn't heard it for some reason, which struck me as sort of strange. So I'm learning something new, which is terrific.
And it's not been used a lot. That's actually why at Deep Human X we use it as our basis, because it actually the term then I have an AI company, and so but we focus on the human side of AI, and so we feel like people have heard, iOS
Mhm.
operating systems, and it gives you kind of a tangible way to see to look at your human machine. So it hasn't been used much, but please everybody use it, because it is a really powerful term that really just talks about how we run around as human beings, and then how my pattern is different than the operating patterns that you run.
Absolutely. It makes complete sense and is a great segue to my next question for Xiaoteng. So you also talked a little bit about patterns in a different way. You were talking about thinking patterns in your chapter and some of the differences that we encounter when people come from different countries with different native languages. Um, we might get back to that in a second. One of the things that I wanted to ask you was about the story behind the title of your chapter. So, again, your chapter was called Good Morning, Ni Hao, Hola, Guten Morgen, something that I was very drawn to, by the way, because I've studied a lot of languages. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about where that came from?
Yeah. So this is actually an interesting title. It is a daily greetings that I hear from my manager. It's my day-to-day routine with a team spread across different countries and different time zones. So this simple multi language hellos is actually a really beautiful reminder of the diversity we bring to the table every day. And that's why it led to my chapter, like talk about how being aware of the cultural differences within international and multicultural team can truly enhance the workspace relationships. And also want to touch on like a little bit about the reasoning behind that. I'm thinking in today's the fast-paced world, we often focus on just getting the job done. In the process, we sometimes just overlook the fact that the success depends on others to some degree, right? Like Lori mentioned in her chapter about the human operating system, which leads to what different energy can, have different behavior for each individual and change the dynamic of the meeting. And I choose to touch on a different topic on the individual differences that exist within the team. And for me, by understanding and appreciating the diverse cultural background of the teammates, we can bring a new kind of energy into our work, one based on the connection, empathy, and collaboration. I believe the awareness can shift the team dynamic in a powerful way, creating a more inclusive and re energized workspace for everyone.
Absolutely. And I think it's amazing. But I thought that your team manager just did that once, but the fact that they do it every day, or every time you have a stand up is really an amazing example of creating an inclusive space and an inclusive experience, which is more needed than ever these days. So one of the lines from your description of that experience in the stand-up was, "This was such a warm welcome with minor effort that made everyone smile." And I really appreciated that because it's when we are in this fast-paced world, we're running to our next meeting, we're trying to get things done. We often don't have enough time in the day to get all the things done that we want to do. Sometimes it's the little things that really don't take much time or much effort at all that can make this huge difference. And Lori, going back to the human operating system, it's understanding those differences that can give us the inspiration to come up with the little things that
Yes.
make those differences.
And here's the beauty of it. When you're talking about like what we both actually got to, both the patterns and the just shifting the energy a little bit, like energy matters. And shifting energy doesn't have to do, it doesn't require you to do anything more. None of us need any more to do, right? Like we are all at the place of like, I can't. Our society has made sure of that. But with the energy going back to your human operating system and your thinking, right? Those we are all highly tuned researchers. Our bodies are always looking at everyone else to understand, is their intention good? Is their intention like intention bad? And as you talked about, like in the stand up meeting, like that's a small little switch that can happen. But what is really important is that that person gave just a little brief space for there to be room for anyone else. And if you go to the human operating system, I think we both also talk about awareness. I called it the observer's mindset, where you're not judging, you're not emotional to it. You're just like, what is actually happening? And that's one of the easiest ways to take a step back and just start looking at what are other people doing around you, and where might they have pain, where might they seem like they're hurried, and you have the opportunity to take a deep breath. Again, this is happening anyways in the back of your mind. All where I'm calling out my chapter is hey, remember that this is going on. So if you can like take that breath and adopt an observer's mindset, all of a sudden areas and things that seem like you were so busy, you might see openings up. You might see some of your tension released. You might see bits of joy come into an otherwise tense situation, right? And it almost takes the undoing, not the doing more. It talks about, really the human operating system works with awareness. And so when you become aware and you become that observer, you have this beautiful opportunity to make an impact, not only for yourself, but then for the people you're sharing your workday with.
There's so many things in there that I would love to call out if we had more time. One of the things that I loved in your chapter, Lori, was something that you just touched on. I'm going to read out one of the sentences. Our energy influences those around us. By shifting it intentionally, we can transform not only our experience, but the entire dynamic of a team, which is what you were just talking about. And it's, again, it's a simple, relatively simple concept that without the awareness and without observing both ourselves and others, we could easily miss and make such a difference in the environment. So,
I mean, and I'm to respond to that, like I'm one of those people who like when you have timekeepers in a meeting that are keeping time for the sake of time only, it drives me bonkers, just to be honest. But I also see there's so much value if you are in back-to-back meetings, you have to protect your own boundaries and give yourself a 5-minute time so your brain can register what you just heard and it'll file this away for here and that later. Like that's literally how we're set up to work. But when you just go from meeting to meeting, what often happens, and I have definitely been, done this myself a million times. But right, you show up and you're like, okay, what are we doing here today? And my energy speaks, and I bring in, maybe it's the stress of my home life, maybe it's stress from the last meeting. I'm bringing, like, if I'm coming in and I'm, aggressive, you're feeling that. So that that is me putting out energy that other people then are going to have to respond to. Whereas if I actually set my own boundaries and be like, hey, I'm going to be 2 minutes late to the meeting, but I have to go to the bathroom and take a breath, right? Then I can show up and be like, hey guys, what's going on? All right, what are we here to do today? And it immediately, without doing anything more, in fact, taking more time for yourself, you're actually eliminating any stress or tension that you might be bringing. And in my dream world, right, we would all be personally accountable for our own energy. And then that way, right, we have the observer's mindset to say, hey, that pattern isn't, I don't want to respond to someone's pattern. But if you don't have your own, if you're not aware of your own energy, you don't even have the opportunity to not just react. You actually can respond if you're aware of your own energy.
absolutely. Xiaoteng, one of the things that I was noticing was both of your chapters start out with a tense situation. they go in very different directions from there. And in fact, the tense situation that yours starts out with turns out not to really be tense at all. So I'm interested in your thoughts about what Lori was just saying from a slightly different perspective. You are very, very conscious of patterns, especially in terms of language and the way we think about things and the way we communicate things. So how do you give yourself the space to diffuse a tense situation, for example?
So for me, it's actually a learning curve. It's a learning curve. Like when I just joined my company, it's my first job actually. Just graduated, joined the joined my first job in the English speaking team in a multicultural team. I actually I was really self focused. But after all kind of learning that I start being aware of how others are feeling because we are a team, right? If I work by myself, I couldn't go that far. I have to work with a team, then we can go move farther. Then in this case, I have to be aware of okay, how others are feeling, what is their reaction, and be aware of their emotion if they turn on the video on the meeting, then also do some self-reflection for myself. What did I do that, make others feel bad or something? So with this kind of thinking, I started getting more and more like thinking about if I were them, would I want to be treated this way? And right now, my latest mindset is I will always treat people the way I want to be treated. I don't want to be misunderstood. And I also don't want to misunderstand people's intention. I always try to clarify that, reduce the gap in these, especially in this kind of virtual world when we are working remotely. If we miss one chance to clarify ourselves, to understand each other, it would be a really big gap um, in the team.
And that's a beautiful tie back to awareness and observing both the energy and the patterns and just doing it in different ways. It's, um, like I said at the beginning, this is a topic that's very, very close to my heart. So, switching gears a little bit, I'm really curious about the process that both of you went through in working with the other authors and writing your chapters. Xiaoteng, we'll start with you. So, a couple of things that you brought up tie into this question. First, you were interested in the collaborative part of it and working with the other authors. So I'm curious about how that part went. I'm also curious uh, how it went writing in a language that wasn't your own because of specifically what you talked about in your chapter. So were you translating back and forth? How did that go for you?
Yeah, let's start from the like using my second language in writing the book. It was really challenging. Well, but this kind of challenge was also one of the reasons I wanted to do that, right? I want to challenge myself. And for me, writing a book chapter in English feel like it's just a personal milestone, almost like checking off a big life goal. And beyond that, it's just another opportunity for me to share my experience for somebody who want to navigate the similar cross-cultural experiences. So but writing in another language meant I had to spend extra time to reviewing the grammar or sentence structure or making sure my ideas came across clearly. I often caught myself writing in a more circular or indirect way. It is something common in Mandarin in my language. But I had to learn how to adapt my message for a different audience using a more direct and structured style, which actually, when we talk to other authors for some of our idea, by using their response can also help me clarify, okay, which sentence should I put first, which should I put later, what should be, I need to put a result first and put the reasoning, explain the reasoning later, those kind of structure. And in terms of the writing process for myself, so honestly, my topic is related to multicultural. I wanted to, just because I wanted to use the cultural related topic, I was very mindful for how easily this kind of conversation can touch on some sensitive areas like politics or religion. These are the topics that can divide people, and I didn't want to do that. My goal was to stay objective and genuine to share my experience. So, the biggest challenge was finding the balance and being honest while also being thoughtful. And the good news is, I learned that it is still possible to tell a meaningful story that resonates across different perspectives. For me, at first, it felt like writing a diary because I didn't know what to start. So in the beginning, it started like writing a diary, but it's a diary that stretches from 5 years ago till today. The process is kind of like a deep self reflection for myself on my career journey and how my mindset has evolved based on my learning curve, right? I've realized I have grown from being a more self-focused to becoming a true people person, like I just mentioned in the prior questions, to started to care not just about myself. I want to care about the people I work with. So the overall process was really challenging, but it's a good one for the self-reflection.
And you did a beautiful job. As I mentioned to you, I can relate to trying to function in a language that isn't your native language. And you're sort of writing a book is hard for anybody. It's hard when you just speak one language. So you're kind of operating on at least two levels at the same time. And one of the things that I was struck by in your chapter was it really was all positive. There wasn't anything that could be considered divisive or um, challenging in terms of uh, splitting people up. So I think you really handled it beautifully. And just to follow up on that, you mentioned that you did collaborate with the other authors and that their feedback helped you um, decide how you wanted to change things or edit things that you have written. Can you tell us any more about how the collaborative process worked for you with the other authors?
Yeah. For example, in one of the call that I had before, when I was just sharing my kind of the brief initial idea, one thing that surprised me is she mentioned to me this multicultural thing is something that not being talked enough. Well, I am a little bit surprised because I have been in this multicultural team, but it just I that was unexpected answer to me. That's why I wanted to explore more about my own experiences. Initially, I was thinking about, okay, what about I use the experience from my colleague or from my like other friends? But no, that is not the case. Just because I really want to explain more about my feeling and how this on how the behavior we do in our team can bring the positive impact. I have to think more about our own experience and what really happened on me. So that is something, it's just a good example that this conversation with authors motivate me to think deeper on like explore more my own experience instead of taking others.
It's a great example, and I can understand how that comment was unexpected because we do have so many global teams and distributed teams. And at the same time, I think it's something that, while very common, we don't always talk about. So, I mean, I have that experience too. I've worked on many, many, many globally distributed teams going back many years. And there isn't always a level of awareness and observation and understanding and empathy that is required to have the conversations around how are we doing? How are we communicating with each other? A manager who greets people in different languages at the beginning of the stand up. So I can understand where that comment came from, and it's fascinating to hear how the authors work together. So, Lori, I'm going to turn the same question over to you. How was the writing process for you, and how did the collaborative part come into it?
Um, so it was definitely different than I thought. I have been told, oh, you should write a book. And I was like, yeah, I can write on this topic. Like, I'm super passionate about it. I can do this. And I expected it to just come out of me and it was going to be great. And I did get my first draft out very quickly. And I was like, wow, like, look at me. Good. My ego was feeling good. But if it wasn't for our pods, so we worked in groups. I think my group had 5, and we all just shared our drafts with people. And my first draft that I was like, yeah, I'm feeling all good, I'm smart, right? Came back with some feedback that one person just said it like so honestly and great. And she was like, there's none of you in this story. It's all very technical and that's great, but your information is just boring because there's none of you in it. And I was like, what? And then I was like, oh yeah, she's totally right. So that led to really being, I would say, just humanizing it, like actually bringing in my vulnerabilities, parts of my work history. I have a vast work history, and I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of teams. So I brought in real examples of things that had happened. But it ended up making the writing process much easier too. And I would say I definitely got into the state of flow. I do remember, some of the nights burning candles, blaring music, and just typing at it, typing away, because it was actually becoming much more enjoyable when I was working with the other teams to just bounce ideas off people and be collaborative. And then what we found is, even like I'm, learning on this call, what we found very quickly was is that we can see similarities between, right, authors, and we can see differences, and so that helped us to also create, make sure we're all kind of in alignment on the theme of the book, which I thought was interesting. But I would say I learned a lot about myself and about just, the different types of thinking that's out there, and it was a really really fun experience, and that I'm super proud to be part of.
What would you say was your biggest learning?
How individually I'm a pretty vulnerable person. I feel like I'll share probably too much sometimes with people, but when it got to writing, I go to much more just technical. Like, here's this, here's that, here's the point, and it made me really like wonder in my career, where were there opportunities where I could have used different mediums, right? Like speaking versus writing, where I'm just wondering, it made me really just look at and wonder, how had I showed up to other people because of that, probably because of my own laziness of just this, right, versus being vulnerable on paper and being cautious about what I find, not cautious but being more honest. But I think it was really great, and then I also think that it really highlighted how many people are feeling the need for the change at work. Like, that is, it's no longer, is change going to happen? It's like, it's happening. And guess what? We're the ones who have to make the change happen. So I think this process was great for that.
I love that. And the change is constant, right? And it's where do we want to be in that change? What part do we want to play in it?
Mhm.
Xiaotang, what would you say was your biggest learning from the whole process?
Well, so some of the biggest learning, the first one is, honestly, I was relieved when I realized during our weekly call that I'm not the only one doesn't know how to start. So I learned that, well, I we are the same, right? We didn't know what to start. We have idea, we didn't know how to start. That is one thing that I learned. And also, like Lori mentioned, there are things need to be changed that we realize, okay, even minor thing, even during our routine, like day-to-day code, everything seems to be okay, but there's still something there that could be changed. And that is something we are writing down in the book, that people really realize this kind of minor change can lead to the another bigger impact. Even when I'm reading Lori's chapter, I feel the same. Like, I can feel the tense with your story, because it is also happening in my day-to-day life, and I didn't realize this thing can be resolved by the human operating system that you share. So it is something we learn from each other in the chapter. When we read other author chapter, we learn from each other, and we want to also apply the good thing that other people experience to our day-to-day life to make our this part of the environment get better.
That's beautiful. One of the questions that I was going to ask you was what resonated with you from each other's stories, but I think you've both talked about that at various points. Is there anything either one of you would like to add about that? Something that struck you from the other person's chapter?
I would just add that I loved the stories of like your authenticity and kind of honesty about how nervous you really were starting a job. And then, like, right, like here's someone who's got a master's, here's someone who graduated with a good GPA. Yes, it's your first job. Yes, you're in a new country, but like you really did a good job of just being honest with what was there, and that honesty let me also be more of an honest reader, I think, when I was reading your chapter. So I really like that, and I hope that everyone, who reads it gets that excitement too, where you really do feel like you're in, like I felt like I was in your perspective. Like I was in the hot seat for you, waiting for you to start your new job. Like, oh my gosh. It's kind of nerve-wracking. So I think that it does go down to, that's, comes back to, right, I was able to relate as a person to your story, and just like you had said about me, like I have been there, maybe not about the different language, but about something else. I had that exact same emotion, even if the content was different, and I liked that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And for me, I was really moved by the way that Lori navigate the high stress situation with mindfulness and the intention to shift the energy. Like take a deep breath, reset and refocus, then join another meeting nicely, right? The focus on the collaboration and having trust or solving problem for the greater good, this actually just align with how we view cross-cultural teamwork. And the message you have, Lori, reminded me, also you mentioned it earlier today, like it is not just about what we are doing at work. It's about how we show up, right? And connect with each others. When this energy flows freely between people, we can have more creativity and mindful progress follow after that.
Yeah, I agree. Like, right? Like people feel as if friction at work is a no-no, but that's actually, friction means, hey, there's a problem to solve. But for some reason, at least here in the US, I know we a lot of times just pretend it's not there. So I'm glad that that resonated with you, because I'm sure every single one of us, right, has many scenarios where it's not that it's really bad, it's just that the tension, there's tension in the room, or the scenario's off, but we don't necessarily have the room within every work culture to actually turn that into productive friction. And instead it gets dismissed, which can be really difficult for each of us just as human beings.
And I just want to add that I think you both did a fantastic job of bringing us into what you were feeling. I could feel both the energy and the excitement from your chapter, Xiaoteng, and Lori, the stress when you talked about the tight shoulders, and I felt the whole thing. I was sitting right there in that meeting with you. So whether that was your original intention or came from work with the collaborative authors, it was great. I loved it. Um, Before we wrap up, I would love for each of you to share, how can our listeners get in contact with you or follow you or reach out to you if they want to do that? Shatang, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I am really active on LinkedIn, so please connect with me. So I often connect with recent graduate students to explore a career in data. That is what I have been doing, do a coffee chat if they reach out to me. And I also helping international students with their like resume revision, those kind of stuff. So I'm always happy to connect and chat. If you would like to chat with me about my cross-cultural working experience or navigating the area career in tech, feel free to reach out.
Terrific. Thank you. And Lori, how about you?
Well, you can find me at in LinkedIn. You can also visit my website at www.deephumanx.com. And also, I have a podcast called Wired for Wonder, where we delve into and help leaders think about the future of work. What could it look like? And then really looking at how can we as human beings, right, start to shift the way that leadership is done. But so if you're a leader, you're not sure what to do with all of the changes with AI, not sure if you have the right thinking, please feel free to reach out to me as well and love to talk about the human operating system.
Terrific. Thank you both so much for being here today and for sharing your valuable insights and for your powerful contributions to the book. And again, for you listeners, the book is called Are We Friends or Coworkers? Exploring Relationships at Work. It will be out on May 30th and will be available both on Amazon and bookshop.org. If you enjoyed this conversation, we also invite you to explore our first two best-selling books. The first one was Leading with Self-Awareness, Starting from the Inside Out. So that touches on a lot of the topics that we talked about today too. And the second was Leading with Compassion, Cultivating Connection from the Inside Out, both available at bookshop.org and Amazon now. And if this conversation sparked something meaningful for you, please consider sharing it with your network or community. If you would like to connect with others on the journey to create more conscious, human-centered workspaces, we invite you to learn more about the growing community at changingwork.org. Thank you for being part of the movement to change work from the inside out. Have a great day.